Penguins and the Devils from New York, New Jersey. Prudential Center is the site of the first of 4 games between these two squads. How did it all pan out? Plus 1,100 career NHL games for Erik Karlsson, who got the win. Will there be a couple of things to carry over to tomorrow afternoon's showdown in Pittsburgh? Penguins postgame is live on Sports for Beginners, and of course, it's new home of On the Ice and Behind the Benches. It's live, and it's next. Let's get started. Welcome to Sports for Beginners. This is the show where I cover the Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Blue Jays, and take you on a journey through the world of sports from the fans' perspective. Here is your host, Scott McGregor. Let's have some fun. I kind of butchered the opening of this, but yes, this show is indeed available on the Ice and Behind the Benches. It is the new home of Penguins post-game hockey. We have yet to get our first edition of Penguins Weekly Recap out to you, but we plan to do that eventually. It's going to be quite a busy week for us here on the podcast. We got Buffalo and Miami this week on Sunday. We also have not Miami, and that's a football game, by the way, that we're going to be covering. We also have the Penguins and the Kings. We'll talk about that later. And speaking of Penguins hockey, let's get it on. Penguins fall in this game 2-1 in a shootout as the Devils stay undefeated at home with a shootout win against the Pens, just like we did in our Sports for Beginners special feature, which featured the Caps and the Penguins, and the ninth career showdown between Penguins and Capitals captain Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin. Of course, the Penguins ended up winning that game. Final score, in case you missed it, 5-3 Penguins. That was a few days ago. Today, it's about losing 2-1 to the New Jersey Devils. Our head coaches, Dan Muse, and of course, spoiler alert, he used to coach the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's Sheldon Keefe. Sheldon Keefe versus Dan Muse. That was the head coaching matchup for this game between the New Jersey Devils, who arrived in game at a record of 10-4-0. Best record in the Metro by far. The Penguins arrived at a record of 9-4-2, coming off their recent victory against Alex Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals. The records as we sit here, heading into Pittsburgh's next game, which is tomorrow afternoon, at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. And I might have also butchered my keys to victory, but that's okay. Moving on, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern for that game. And of course, the game is also on at 11 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Mountain when they take on the Kings, 8 p.m. in France, 7 p.m. in the UK. Today's game was on 12:30 p.m. Eastern and got going 8 minutes after 12:30. 11:30 a.m. Central, 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 a.m. Mountain, and of course, 30 p.m. in the UK and 6:30 p.m. in France. 8 minutes after those timelines is when this one got started. Before we go between the pipes, for the starters, Garrett Rank, Brandon Schrader, Andrew Smith, and Ryan Jackson, the officials for this afternoon's contest at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. Starting goaltenders and the backup. For Sheldon Keefe, he would go with number 34, Jake Allen, who would take on for Dan Muse, number 37, who would get the go for the Penguins. The backup for the Penguins and head coach of the Penguins, Dan Muse, would be number 1, Sergei Marashov. He will likely start tomorrow afternoon's game against the Los Angeles Kings and make his NHL debut if that is indeed the case. Jacob Markstrom on the other side of the ice is the backup for the Devils. And with that, we can go into high gear with this action. Want to remind you, though, that later on in our show, we will be touching on the upcoming out-of-town scoreboard and the out-of-town scoreboard thus far, as there are two other games, one that is now final and one that is currently in play. We will touch on those games momentarily when we come up to that point in time. Also want to remind you that the shake of the game and the game puck of the game are coming up. The shake of the game is the player of the game segment we have here on Penguins Postgame. And just a short reminder, Penguins postgame here on Sports for Beginners and of course on its new home of On the Ice and Behind the Benches may be getting a new name for its show, but the segments, they will stay the same. Without further ado, let's get down to it, shall we? We'll get to the game stats once we are through with the scoring and the penalties. And speaking of that, just like the capital recap we did for Sports for Beginners, which you'll be able to hear momentarily and probably before you hear this one, we're going to start on the penalty side. And we're going to go by team. So starting off with the victorious New Jersey Devils, Jack Hughes getting things started early. My bad, that was not Jack Hughes. That was actually number 5, Brandon Dillon, getting the call. 5 minutes for fighting. On the Penguins side, because, well, when you have a fight, you can't just penalize one side. And I understand there was also a couple of other penalties that were not called, so the fighting penalty would be the only penalty that we would get for both squads at 10 minutes and 41 seconds. On the Penguins side, the fighting major goes to number 39, Anthony Mantha, and Brandon Dillon getting the guiltiness for the New Jersey Devils. Let's go to the scoring. Well, the Devils get things started as I'm going to go with AG, just in case I pronounce this guy's name wrong. AG, with his 3rd goal of the year, gives the Devils the lead in the first period of play, though it would not stay that way. It would not stay that way, though, but it would stay that way for 20 minutes of play. This goal coming late in the period at 19 minutes and 12 seconds. You know what? Let me give it a shot. Let me give it a shot pronouncing this guy. He was wearing the number 81 of the New Jersey Devils, the home team of this game. He gets Grzetzky, Arzeni Grzetzky. If I pronounce that wrong, I'm going to go with a G just to be on the plus side, and I apologize if I pronounce the name wrong. He gets the action going for the Devils. Devils escape the first period with a lead of 1-0. So it's 1-0 Devils after a period of play. The scoring of the second period coming up in just a moment. I will also go period by period in the shots on goal once we are through our scoring and penalties. And speaking of penalties, let's go to period number 2, the middle frame. In this period, only one penalty was taken. That went to the Penguins side, and that came so the first team to the power play this afternoon, even though it comes in the second period, the first team to the power play would be the New Jersey Devils, as Erik Karlsson gets called 2 minutes for hooking, 49 seconds into the game's second period. At this point in time, the New Jersey Devils had a 1-goal lead. They would maintain the 1-goal lead for the duration of the penalty, but the Penguins kill off the Karlsson penalty and do score 12 minutes and 33 seconds after that. Ryan Graves, his first goal of the new campaign, picks up the goal. Brian Rust picks up assist number 10 on the season, and Sidney Crosby picking up assist number 9 On time of the goal, once again, 12 minutes, 33 seconds. So after 40 minutes of play, it's the Pens and the Devils tied at 1. Let's go to period number 3. In period number 3, no goals to speak of, but there are penalties to speak of in period number 3. Starting with the New Jersey Devils, the first penalty went, and it actually was a penalty to a side in the period. So 2 penalties in the period, 1 to a side. The first penalty came at a minute 45 as Stefan Noesen gets nabbed for slashing Ryan Graves. Stefan Noesen gets nabbed for slashing Ryan Graves, a 2-minute minor for slashing at a minute 30 as very early on. Penguins now get their first opportunity on the power play. And this was really a battle of the penalty kills in this game because nobody on the Penguins or the Devils scored on the man advantage. And speaking of penalties, let's go to the Penguins side for the third period. That belongs to Evgeny Malkin. Evgeny Malkin getting a 2-minute minor for cross-checking. The recipient of the cross-checking penalty was Cody Glass, cross-checking at 12 minutes and 39 seconds. On to overtime we go. Still tied at 1. So regulation didn't solve anything. No goals scored on the play. Let's go to overtime. In overtime, well, the teams had chances. They had chances after chances after chances, but nobody could get the game winner in overtime past either Artur Shilovs or Jake Allen, the goaltenders for Pittsburgh and the Devils. Regulation didn't solve anything. Overtime didn't solve anything. We didn't find a winner in overtime, and we also didn't take penalties. No penalties to speak of for the Penguins or the Devils. So off we go to the shooter versus the goaltender. Off we go to the shootout, where it would be Jake Allen and Artur Shilovs, the following shooters who would shoot in the shootout: Paul Cotter and Jesper Bratt for the New Jersey Devils, both of which got the puck past Artur Shilovs. Both players got the puck past him. Shooters taking on Jake Allen, Penguins captain Sidney Crosby, and the first shooter that Jake Allen would face would be the Rusty Razor, the Rustache for Ryan Rust. Our verdicts: Paul Cotter with a game-winning goal. It was the first goal scored against Artur Shilovs. Jesper Bratt ultimately scored another goal. Jesper Bratt picked up another goal for the Devils. So that means at this point, it's still Devils on top. Crosby needs to score. It's 2-0 Devils in the shootout. Bottom of the second, as they would say in baseball terms, bottom of the second run in the shootout. If Crosby scores, we play on and we have a few more shooters. He takes the puck and Jake Allen stops him. So the Devils will win 2-0 in a shootout and ultimately win the hockey game 2-1 after a lot, and I mean a lot, of work. Here we go. Shots on goal per period. 12-6 in favor of the Penguins after the first 20 minutes of play. And then things get a little chippy here. The Penguins had 11 shots on goal to the Devils' 9 shots on goal in the second period, which would eclipse for a 23-15 lead for the Penguins in the shots on goal tally. Things get evener in regulation as the Penguins drop, being outshot in the regulation period 8-7, but still nobody scores here. So when you add up the 11, 12, and 7 shots on goal the Penguins had in this contest, leading to the third period, going to overtime, they had a total of 30 shots at the end of regulation and at the end of 3 periods of play. The Devils, meanwhile, they scored 6 shots on goal in the first, 9 in the second, 8 in the third. Where were they heading into overtime? Let's find out. They were at 23 shots, which would make sense because the Penguins ended up outshooting the New Jersey Devils 34-24 and accounting for that accounts for the number of shots, I should say, that were taken. So the Penguins lose 2-1 in a shootout, but they win the shots on goal battle 34-24. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, it is time for the stats of the game, particularly a reiteration of the stats for shots on goal, for total that is, the face-off circle, power play penalty kill, penalty minutes, hits, block shots, giveaways, and takeaways, plus the 3 stars of the game brought to you by on the Penguins Radio Network. Of course, we are not sponsored by that, but that is brought to you by on the Penguins Radio Network, brought to you by your neighborhood Ford stores in Pittsburgh. Ford cars, trucks, and SUVs are the official vehicles of the Pittsburgh Penguins. 3 stars are brought to you by your neighborhood Ford stores in Pittsburgh. Ford cars, trucks, and SUVs are the official vehicles of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And again, we are not sponsored by all of that. So we have those and the stats of the game, as well as what's going on elsewhere around the league. What else is still to come? How did the other side of Pennsylvania do? Find out as Penguins postgame and Penguins hockey continues on the ice and behind the benches in just a few moments.
CNT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down, nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
Oh, the game's over. Really? Yes, really. But you know what? It's not quite over because the content continues. Join us after select PWHL games this year on Sports for Beginners for the return of PWHL Recap. We got everything you'd like, from 3 stars of the game, the women's hockey player of the game, the play of the game, the dominant star to watch, all on PWHL Recap, coming back this fall and winter to Sports for Beginners, the podcast, with your host, Scott McGregor. You won't want to miss a minute of the action. We may not cover all games, but we will definitely make sure we sprinkle in the expansion teams against some of the original 6, which are the Vancouver Golden Eyes and the Seattle Torrent. You won't want to miss it, and it all starts soon.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo, 2 powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
Hi, Scott. It's Ali here. I just wanted to mention that I'm really enjoying the show and I'm really enjoying what you're putting together. And I wanted to just say I'm enjoying being a part of it as well. So please keep up the phenomenal work and make sure you guys keep this podcast going because it really suits you well.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Penguins postgame here on the ice and behind the benches. Penguins and the Devils, the topic of conversation. Want to take the quick reminder here before we jump back into Penguins and Devils to remind you that puck drop between the Penguins and the Kings is at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 11 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Mountain, And for our friends in the UK and over in France, we will have another edition of Penguins Hockey, following another Sports for Beginners edition of Penguins Hockey that will be exclusively available on the ice and behind the benches at a later time, and part of season 4 of Sports for Beginners. What is our next broadcast for that? Well, that will be game 1 of the NHL Global Series between the Pens and the Predators, game 1 at 2 p.m. Eastern, and the rest of the times I mentioned for the Kings game. So no Penguins postgame for the Los Angeles Kings, but we will still cover the game. I will still have notes to cover for that game, and you can listen to the game as you do every game in Pittsburgh. If you're not tuning in on the TV side, you can tune in to the radio side, UXDX FM Pittsburgh, an iHeart radio station, and your home of the Pens and the best Pens coverage. UXDX FM Pittsburgh, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins hockey on the radio. And of course, if you're tuning in on the TV side, when it's not in national broadcast or broadcast internationally, check out Sportsnet Pittsburgh for all the Penguins hockey you want. And with that being said, let's get right back to it. Pens and Devils, our final score once again as mentioned, Penguins 1, Devils 2. They will drop the puck in Pittsburgh on January 8th and February 26th, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Mountain, midnight in the UK, and 1 a.m. in France. 2026. Those will be January 8, 2026, and February 26, 2026. The next time they are at the Prudential Center will be on April 9th. Game time, just like the games in Pittsburgh, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Mountain, midnight in the UK, and 1 a.m. in France. And with that said, enough wasting time. We've gone between the pipes. We've gone on the ice, looking at the head coaches on the bench and those wearing the pinstripes as officials. And we've gone over the game in general. We know the final score, but what were the final tallies? Well, as I mentioned before the break, the Penguins outshot the Devils 34-24 was the final tally. In a game that saw 55 face-offs, the Pittsburgh Penguins winning 23 of the 55, 58.2% of the face-offs were won by the New Jersey Devils, 32 of those face-offs. 32 out of 55 for the Devils, 23 out of 55 for the Penguins in terms of wins in the draw. Both the power play were non-existent. Penguins 0 for 1 on the power play. Excuse me. I almost was going to say penalty kill, 0 for 1 on the penalty kill, but that would be an understatement. This game probably doesn't see overtime if that happens. Well, then again, it probably does, depending on what the score ends up being. But anyways, moving on. 0 for 1 on the power play for the Penguins. 0 for 2 on the power play for the Devils. The Devils perfect on the penalty kill. Same for the Penguins. The Penguins killing off both penalties to go 2 for 2 on the penalty kill, and the New Jersey Devils killing off the only penalty they take in this game to go 1 for 1 on the day and on the penalty kill. Moving right along, penalty minutes for the Penguins, 9 penalty minutes. For the Devils, 7 penalty minutes. Devils out-hit the Penguins 20-19. They also out-blocked the Penguins 22-14. Penguins get a bit of the last laugh in terms of giveaways at 13-11, but technically 11-13 is a better suit for the Devils. They also took the puck away 3 more times than Pittsburgh did. They finished with 6 takeaways, and the Penguins finishing with 3 takeaways. This season series between the Devils and the Penguins continues into 2026, as it is the 2025-2026 season. And with that said, the remaining 3 meetings of the 2025-2026 season will play out beginning in Pittsburgh on January 8th, 2026, wrap up in Pittsburgh on February 26th, and then the whole series wraps up at the same venue it was in today, Saturday, November 8th, 2025, on April the 9th, 2026. Game time for all 3 of those games, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific, p.m. Mountain, midnight in the UK, and 1 a.m. France time. And with that said, that'll do it for our shots and our tally, our game stats rather. Shake of the game, play of the game, and game puck of the game coming up in just a matter of moments. But before we jump to our 3 stars of the game, which will take us to our next break of the show, out of town scoreboard time. Let's take a look at the league. What do we have going on right now? Well, let's find out, shall we? Here we go. Currently going on right now in the second period, we have the Nashville Predators leading the Dallas Stars 3-2 in the second period. Earlier this afternoon, as we enter into the evenings now, of course, we know the Penguins lost 2-1 to the New Jersey Devils. Well, this game doesn't exactly go to a shootout, but it does reach extra time and decide a winner there. It was Tim Stützle, Michael Amadeo, Matej Mitrovic, Jamie Drysdale, and then it was Tim Stützle, his second goal of the game. It's the game winner, goal number 8 on the year for Tim Stützle, There we go. I think I got that right now. And that was the game winner. 3-2 Senators beat the Flyers in overtime. Coming up this evening, the Boston Bruins visit the Toronto Maple Leafs. Boston is 9-7-0 on the regular season. They take on the 8-5-1 Maple Leafs. The Utah Mammoth also in action tonight. They are 9-5-0, going up against a 9-3-2 Montreal Canadiens team who will host them. The Tampa Bay Lightning taking on the Washington Capitals. Capitals record 7-6-1. Lightning record 7-5-2. The New York Rangers and the New York Islanders 6-6-2 Islanders against 7-6-2 Rangers. Those games coming up at 10 p.m. Eastern. And of course, the other times, as I mentioned, for today, obviously, but those were times that I also mentioned for the next time the Devils and the Penguins meet, which are in 2026. Also on the 7 o'clock slate, the Buffalo Sabres, 5-5-4, take on the 9-4-0 Carolina Hurricanes, and the 6-3-4 Seattle Kraken visit the 5-8-2 St. Louis Blues. They visit the 5-8-2 St. Louis Blues. Later in the late window, the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid host Nathan MacKinnon and the Avalanche, Nathan MacKinnon and the Avalanche are 8-1-5. Oilers 6-5-4. They host the Avalanche tonight in the featured presentation of Hockey Night in Canada. It's the 7-8-0 Vancouver Canucks against the 7-6-0 Columbus Blue Jackets. And elsewhere in Vegas, it's the 7-3-3 Golden Knights against the 9-3-1 Ducks. And the 7-6-1 Panthers visit the 6-6-3 San Jose Sharks. Those games at 10 p.m. Eastern. The games still to come are at 7 p.m. Eastern. They are the Bruins, Maple Leafs, the Mammoth Canadiens, the Sabres Hurricanes, the Kraken Blues, the Islanders and the Rangers, and the Lightning and Capitals. As I said, currently ongoing, besides the final score, 3-2 Senators over the Flyers, and of course 2-1 Devils over the Penguins. The Predators hold a lead over the Dallas Stars currently in the second period. All right, time now for your 3 stars of the game. As I mentioned, we are not sponsored by this, but it could come in the nearby future. And if we were on the Penguins radio network, this would be the sponsor of our 3 stars of the game. That is your neighborhood Ford stores in Pittsburgh. Devils stay undefeated with a big win against the Penguins. And here we go with who our stars of the game are. In case you missed that disclaimer, they are brought to you by on the Penguins radio network, your neighborhood Ford stores in Pittsburgh. Here we go with your 3rd star. That was AG, 1 goal, 1 point, no assists. That was New Jersey forward AG. Your 2nd star went to Penguins goaltender Artur Shilovs, ending the game with a save percentage of .958 of 92. And the same thing could be said as a goals against average for your 1st star, New Jersey tender goaltender. New Jersey's goaltender, number 34, Jake Allen, your 1st star of the game. Save percentage at 92. Save percentage at 971. Goals against average of 92. Same for Artur Shilovs, who was your 2nd star. He had a save percentage of 958. And of course, AG, your 3rd star, 1 goal, 1 point, no assists. Those are your 3 stars of the game. Brought to you by, if it was on the Penguins radio network, your neighborhood Ford stores. Time now for your play of the game in our play of the game. Well, I was going to do the disclaimer that I always do, but we're going to just move on and get to our play of the game. And I'm going to provide the audio for it, actually. This one belongs to the goal scored by the one and only Ryan Graves of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Was able to even up the game, and then basically was goaltender game from the 3rd period on to the shootout, where eventually Paul Cotter got the game-winning goal. But Jasper Bratt also got another goal. And of course, as I mentioned, Brian Rust and Sidney Crosby, as you can see right now on the screen, they wind up with a stop by Jake Allen. Play of the game is going to go to Ryan Graves. Here are the men who called as I understand, it was the old 2-9er Phil Borg and Josh Getzoff calling the game on the TV set. We're going to give this thing a chance to load, and barring an ad during audio, we will make sure that we avoid that. All right, doesn't look like there's going to be an ad here, so let's hear the call from the old 2-9er Phil Borg and Josh Getzoff. And by the way, shout out to Josh. Love those game day question of the days that you do on social right before every game. Love those game day question of the days. Ryan Graves, game tying goal. Good enough for my play of the game. Here are Josh and Phil, who had the call on Sportsnet Pittsburgh. All credit to Sportsnet Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh Penguins, the NHL, and of course, the Penguins' opponent, the New Jersey Devils, in this case. Here we go.
Crosby after it, drags it around on the backhand, and pivots. Passes to Rust, back up top, Graves shot, score! Ryan Graves all the way back, and from downtown, the former Devil ties the game at 1.
Well, Gravy, you just got one of the best bounces I've ever seen, as this one goes right off of the chest of Andre Palat and finds its way in the back of the net, or maybe higher than the chest. But this all started with a great shift between Crosby and Rust. A lot of cycling, a lot of puck movement, and it's Sid putting it on the platter. And good things happen when you get pucks to the net. The former Devil.
Yeah, nice catch there, Phil. I didn't catch that Ryan Graves was actually a New Jersey Devil. Nice catch there, Phil. I probably would never have got that. Anyway, that is our play of the game. When we return to our program, we'll hear from Dan Muse before this show wraps up as the Penguins prepare to play the Los Angeles Kings. But before we get to him, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Shake of the Game, which is the player of the game segment, and the game puck of the game. Penguins hockey on the ice and behind the benches, and of course, during special shows on Sports for Beginners that will be part of season number 4 of our podcast. It will continue in just a moment. Our Pens and Devils recap continues in just a few moments. Stay with us. Hey, what's up, PWHL fans? Scott McGregor here, host of Sports for Beginners and Weekly in Sports. Join me on a special Season 4 episode and Season 4 series of episodes on Sports for Beginners starting Friday, November 1st. 2025. That's the day the puck drops for real on the 2025-2026 regular season. We'll get an inside look at the Golden Eyes, the Vancouver Golden Eyes, and the Seattle Torrent. Plus, what can we expect from opening weekend? It all comes your way ahead of puck drop, exclusively on Sports for Beginners. Part of our Season 4 content. Don't miss PWHL Kickoff on the next episode of Sports for Beginners. It is a series of episodes, 3 to the exact, all part of our Season 4 content. That's PWHL Kickoff starting Friday, November 2025. Time to be determined. See you there. And as always, ice time earned.
I wonder if I could make it. It's almost getting to 8 o'clock p.m., and I am still a few more steps away from home to get to my computer to listen to CNT Radio's Cosmopolitan Culture Club. The best of the best music from around the world. Can't wait. I think I made it. CNT Radio, making your day brighter, one song at a time.
Looking for conversations on books and more, as well as tutorials on using your favorite devices and applications? You've come to the right place. Join us weekly on Spicy Techie, where Ali and Sienna provide insightful conversations, as well as useful tips and tricks to help you along on your technological journey. To learn more, tune into the show and like the Spicy Techie Facebook page. Search for Spicy Techie.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Penguins post-game on the Ice and Behind the Benches. Scott McGregor here with you on the Ice and Behind the Benches, your new home for Penguins hockey on the broadcast. Of course, we will have special broadcasts that will be a part of our 4th season of Sports for Beginners, that is. Our next broadcast, by the way, for you regarding Penguins hockey, following the Global Series game, which is at 2 p.m. Eastern. Of course, we may also have a broadcast on the Ice and Behind the Benches following the morning game from the Global Series. Both of those games in Stockholm, Sweden. Both of them against the same opponent. You will hear the head coaches as we normally do at the start of the show. But with that being said, let's get right down to business and get into our shake of the game. Reminder, we have a WhatsApp group chat. Get a look at it. Is either get a free Discord account, but if you are having trouble or rather accessibility issues, please refer to our WhatsApp group chat. You could send us an email, sportsforbeginnerspodcast8231@gmail.com. With that said, let's get right down to business. Here we go. But business to take care of before we can get there. And again, credit to the Pittsburgh Penguins we do not own that audio. Audio credit will also be given to the Penguins. Same thing for the play of the game. Audio credit will be given to the audio that you did hear, which was from Sportsnet Pittsburgh. And Josh Getzoff and the old 2-9er, Phil Borg. With that, here we go. That is going to go to the Rusty Razor, Brian Rust. So we're talking about the Rusty Razor for my shake of the game, and the shake and the game puck of the game is going to go to Ryan Graves. And of course, the shake of the game is our player of the game segment. Whoa. Yes, you'd be right. I forgot to give it to the Devils. So just a reminder, the game puck of the game going to Ryan Graves for the Penguins. Brian Rust gets the shake of the game. Our recipient for the Devils, that's going to go to Devils goaltender Jake Allen. He is going to get the shake of the game. Game puck of the game, well, that's going to go to game-winning goal scorer Paul Cotter. Doesn't score a goal in the game during regulation, but he does score a goal that ends up winning the hockey game in, well, you might call overtime the clutch period, but then again, overtime and the shootout, they are kind of your clutch periods, because after that, whoever scores the game winner wins the game for their team. The third period is really the clutch period of all 3 periods, 4 periods, 5 periods, whatever it is. But in a regulation game, the game only goes 3 periods. And then you go to extra time, or rather overtime. And then if you don't decide it there, here in the NHL, you go to a shootout. Maybe not in the playoffs, but definitely in the regular season. And that's exactly what we got today. So Paul Cotter and Jake Allen, game puck of the game and shake of the game recipients for the Devils. Ryan Graves and Brian Rust, your recipients for the shake of the game and the game puck of the game for the Penguins. Where do these two teams go from here? Well, let's start with the New Jersey Devils. Devils on the off day tomorrow. They will be back in action, wrapping up a 3-game homestand, which they've been on the right foot right from the get-go. Beat the Canadiens 4th on Thursday. They've now beat the Penguins 2-1 in shootout. They will take on the New York Islanders to wrap up that 3-game homestand that they are currently on. Game times at 7 p.m. Eastern. All other times, as I mentioned, for the upcoming games for the Penguins and the Devils when they next meet, which won't be until 2026. Off they go for a 5-game road trip beginning in Chicago. I'll give you just the Eastern time right now for those games. And those games will start in Chicago with game time at 8 p.m. Eastern on November the 12th. That is a Wednesday night. Action on November 15th and a couple of 7 p.m. games on the road. The first is next Saturday at Eastern time, and next Tuesday, not this Tuesday, which is Remembrance Day, November the 11th, lest we forget, but the following Tuesday, the Devils are in Tampa Bay to take on the Lightning at 7 Eastern, 6 Central, 4 Pacific. Same time for the Capitals game as well. And of course, game time against Florida, 7 p.m. 6 Central, 4 Pacific. They will face the Philadelphia Flyers at home, but not before they face the Flyers on the road to wrap up their 5-game road trip and wrap up what we would call around this time the next 5 games, which are part of that 5-game road trip against the Hawks, Capitals, Lightning, Panthers, and Flyers. They'll open up a 2-game homestand after that, and then of course go to Buffalo, and then the Philadelphia Flyers are coming to town to close out November. All right, Penguins next 5, including the last game before they head for the Global Series in just a moment. But first, I promised you Dan Muse. So Penguin fans, let's hear what Coach Dan Muse had to say post-game after the 2-1 shootout loss. You could tell He did not speak for very long, so there's probably some newsy items that we might need to pick up on, and also a reminder that some of the Penguin players are out for a couple of weeks and a couple of months, or in a few months, I should say. So we shall see what the Penguins roster looks like heading into Sweden. I can already tell you some of the players who have been injured will definitely, and I mean definitely, not play tomorrow against the Kings, which is how they start our next 5. And then, of course, the global series with those next 5 as well, but it's against the same team. Still waiting on Dan Muse's availability to come up, and while we do, we'll take a look at what's next for the Penguins, and I will share the screen with the Dan Muse audio when it is available. Speaking of which, there it is. So we will hear from Dan Muse, and then we will get to what's next for the Pens, besides tomorrow afternoon's showdown against the Kings. Here's what Dan Muse had to say following the shootout loss. Enjoy.
Sometimes the pros outweigh the cons, even though you only got 1 point out of this game. I felt like you carried play most of the afternoon.
Yeah, there was a lot to like. I think we got to find a way to get that other point. I think we look back on this game. It's definitely, there's positives. The feeling's never good when you come out of a game and you lose.
And let's see what more he has to say here. Again, this is about not a very long press, but we're listening to Dan Muse right after this hockey game. Let's see what else he's got. Okay, I'm going to bring it back a little bit here. Let's see if it will cooperate for us here. Okay, now we're jumping back. While we wait for that to go back, and we'll see how it goes, let's go to our next 5 for the Penguins. Well, we have the game tomorrow against the Los Angeles Kings. Then a game on Friday against the Nashville Predators. A game on Sunday also against the Predators. That game, however, the Penguins will be the home team. Game time's at 9 a.m. Eastern. Game time for the game on Friday is at p.m. Eastern. Then a few 7 o'clock games, including 2 at home as a back-to-back. They will face the Minnesota Wild first on November 21st, 2025. When we debut PWHL Kickoff on our Season 4 Sports for Beginners content, but we'll talk about that later on. And of course, we've got the Kraken on Saturday at 7 Eastern. Off days Monday, Sunday, and Tuesday. Back at it against the Sabres on the Wednesday, the 26th of November from PPG Paints Arena. And then a back-to-back leading to another showdown with the Toronto Maple Leafs, this time from Pittsburgh. The next 5 games for Pittsburgh include tomorrow afternoon, Friday afternoon, Sunday morning, next Friday night, and next Saturday night. Not the 15th, the following night, the 22nd of November. And with that being said, let's go back to Dan Muse and let's see if we can actually get this going. I'm going to stop the share here for a moment and let's try that again with Dan Muse. And if you would like to hear Dan Muse's comments not on this show, we'll provide a link for you to listen to it afterwards. Perhaps I will provide a link to our friends over at DK Pittsburgh Sports, Dan Kolojevic and company. By the way, DK, great shows, love the daily shots, and even the double shots are really good. Not a lot of, Penguin stuff, but that's okay. I'll take what I can get. With that said, let's try this again and let's hear once again from Dan Muse. Let's see how far we get this time.
Yeah, there was a lot to like, but I think we got to find a way to get that other point too. I think we look back on this game and there's positives. The feeling's never good when you come out of a game and you lose, but I think we'll look back and all points are important. We got 1. We just got to find a way to get that other one.
Why do you think you've struggled to figure it out so far?
It's something we'll continue to, I think there's all parts of our game we'll continue to look at and continue to work on. So that's obviously one that they haven't gone our way, and we'll continue to put time into looking at why and continuing to work on them.
Is it possible to actually practice shootouts in those conditions?
I mean, you can practice for sure. I think it's always a little bit different there. I mean, you know, the goalies know the shooters know the goalies, but it's something you can definitely work on. You can, it's things you can look at. We'll continue to.
Shootout notwithstanding, I would think you were pretty impressive from yourself and your goaltender today too.
Yeah, no, he's a huge part of why we got a point there. He made some massive saves. You know, there was some, you know, in the loud ones, it wasn't like it was an onslaught of them. It was like they were coming, but like some of the big ones that he had to make were really big. And I thought he had a good game. A big, huge part of why we got a point there.
In his game.
No, I mean, I think sometimes a little bit where with the penalty kills and coming off of it, like lost a little bit of that rhythm 5-on-5, but he's getting some looks. Like that's, I think the big thing is like he's putting himself, and you've seen that over the last few games of some really good, you know, offensive opportunities, putting himself in some really good spots. And we want to make sure, you know, for him, it's just he's continuing to get into those areas.
That's Dan Muse speaking to the media after the loss. For more from the Pittsburgh Penguins post-game, and of course from game views to post-game interviews, pre-game interviews, morning skate, and more, log on to pittsburghpenguins.com, or if you're in Canada, log on to nhl.com/Pittsburgh Penguins/videos. Link will be provided in our description. And honestly, with that said, let it quickly, before we close out the show here, go ahead and take a look at the ongoing action before we take a look to Sunday's action on the slate. Of course, the 7 o'clock and 10 p.m. games set to drop the puck momentarily. Of course, 10 p.m. Still a little bit of an hour, but just about almost an hour away from the 7 p.m. games beginning. In the 3 p.m. game, that is the Stars and Predators. That is in the third period as we speak. And it is the Nashville Predators 4 and the Dallas Stars 3. 8 games on the slate tomorrow, including Penguins and the Kings. It all gets started at 1 p.m. Eastern when the Chicago Blackhawks, 7, 5, and 3 at the moment, take on the 9-6 Penguins. Will take on the 6, 5, and 4 Kings. That's at 2 p.m. Eastern. That's the game we are going to be keeping an eye on as best as we can. Maple Leafs play the 9-4-0 Carolina Hurricanes. At the current record they are at right now, they are 8-5-1. The Ottawa Senators, 7, 5, and 3, taking on the 9-5-0 Mammoth. 6, 3, and 4 Kraken take on the Dallas Stars, 7 p.m. Eastern. From Dallas, 7, 4, and 3 are the Dallas Stars at this time. Over in the late window, starting about 8 p.m., we have the 4, 10, and 2 Flames against the 6, 7, and 3 Wild. The 9, 5, and 0 Jets take on the 9, 3, and 1 Ducks. That's at 10 p.m. Eastern. The 8, 1, and 5 Avalanche battle the 7, 8, and 0 Canucks. Also at 10 p.m. Eastern. So quite a couple of games at 7, 3 of them to the exact. 1 game at 8, 2 at 10, 1 at 2 p.m. Eastern, and 1 at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, November 9th, 2025. The Penguins take it to the New Jersey Devils, but they come up short and fall 2-1 to the New Jersey Devils. They'll do battle once again, this time from Pittsburgh. And of course, they will be battling in Pittsburgh twice before they come back to the Prudential Center, the site of today's game. Game times are at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific, p.m. Mountain, midnight in the UK, and of course, 1 a.m. in France. The next time they battle will be in Pittsburgh at PPG Paints Arena, but the final score today from the Prudential Center, Devils 2, Penguins 1, and even though the Penguins lost, as we start to wrap up here, I want to remind you that our next Sports for Beginners special broadcast, part of our Season 4 episodes on Sports for Beginners, will be following the afternoon game between the Nashville Predators and the Pittsburgh Penguins. That is the road game for the Penguins. And our next On the Ice and Behind the Benches program will be following the home game for the Penguins. Note the start time, 9 a.m. Eastern in Stockholm, Sweden, is the second game of a home and home series away from home. And just before we wrap it up here, once again, congratulations to Eric Carlson, EK6 game number 1100. As of today, he'll play in, if he does play tomorrow, he'll play in game 1101 of his NHL career if he does play tomorrow. Pens fall 2-1 to the Devils. In the new year, the season series continues. But for now, that is it for this one. Thank you very much for being with us. Despite some of the hiccups I've had over the broadcast, I apologize for those hiccups. Even if you don't hear them when this show hits live, but that's okay. I wouldn't want you to hear the hiccups. Anyways, Mike Lang always does this at the end of every Penguins victory, but I like to do it win or lose. And in this case, the Penguins lost this afternoon, but I'm still going to do it anyways. And because Justin Brazeau is not in the Penguins lineup, I'm still going to go ahead and do it. Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has just left the building. That is the Mike Lang line. And of course, I've grown accustomed to it. So that is why I'm referring to Mike Lang's line. Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has just left the building. Win or lose. Pens of the Kings on deck. I will be covering the game. We won't have a show, unfortunately, but that's okay because that means you can catch us after the Global Series, both on Sports for Beginners and on the ice and behind the benches. That is it for us. Let's go, Pens. We will catch you on the flip side and see you on our shows during the Global Series. Between the Pens and the Preds, what will the records be coming out of those series? What will they be going in? Find out when their final games against the Kings and whoever the Preds play before they play Pittsburgh. In this case, the team they play tonight or the team they're playing right now, the Dallas Stars, when we bring our Global Series coverage to you. Until then, we'll catch you on the flip side. And of course, let's go Pens. Thank you so much for listening to Sports for Beginners. If you would like to learn more about the show, you can visit the podcast Facebook page or visit the official website. You can also send us an email at sportsforbeginnerspodcast8231@gmail.com. As we always remind you, it is not goodbye, it is until next time.